The election of our lifetimes. A blue wave or polls wrong again. It's all come down to this. This is the team you need. Breaking down the results. Live election night coverage beginning next on MSNBC. From MSNBC, Decision 2020, Election Night. Live from Democracy Plaza. Here now are Rachel Maddow and Brian Williams.
Here we go, 6 p.m. in the East, and we're underway. Americans have been voting for days, setting records, in fact, and they are still voting at this hour in what is a titanic struggle for the future of our country. It will now be decided during an uncontrolled pandemic in our country, which explains the 100 million plus votes that are already in. Brian Williams here with you from our NBC News Global Headquarters in New York, joined by my colleague and friend Rachel Maddow at the far end of our expanded studios. Rachel.
Thank you, Brian. Nicole Wallace and Joy Reid are here by my side at our corner of the studio as well, at a physical distance that belies our emotional closeness. I got to come up with a different one every night. Our election night MVP, Steve Kornacki, of course, is at the board, standing by for the first results, which are already starting to come in. Tonight, former Vice President Joe Biden back in his hometown, Wilmington, Delaware, after one final push through Pennsylvania, stopping in Philly and in Scranton, where he visited his childhood home. The former vice president started his day early this morning by going to church and then by visiting the grave of his late son, Beau.
While for his part, President Trump started his day by calling into Fox News, and aside from a brief stop at his campaign headquarters over in Virginia, the president has been largely out of view this day. Tonight, the president is huddled at the White House behind a new non-scalable wall where he is expected to host 250 to 400 people, as one does during a pandemic, at an indoor election night party in the People's House.
It is going to be a big night tonight, no matter what happens in the end. We are in for the long haul. We recognize that the long haul might not mean this evening in terms of getting results, but we will be here with you for it throughout. Let's get started now with the closest thing that we've got to a roadmap for the journey ahead. Steve Kornacki, we are going to be looking to you all night long. Let's start. What do you got?
Well, here we go. We will be getting some results, actually, we think this hour from Kentucky, from Indiana. All the polls not closed there, but some will this hour. But before that, let's take a look at what we can expect from tonight. So we'll fire up our Road to 270, our battleground map. Now, there are a couple ways to look at this. First of all, let's start with this. Are there any states tonight where President Trump is going to be on offense? What I mean by that is, are there any states that Donald Trump did not carry in 2016 that were Clinton states that he could pick off tonight and add to what he won in 2016? The Trump campaign has been talking about, remember these three tonight, New Hampshire, Minnesota, and Nevada. Clinton states in 2016, the Trump campaign has been saying they think they have a shot at. We got to say, coming into tonight, the polling we've seen before the election has not put President Trump in great position in those states. So the burden is on him tonight as these votes come in to show that he can make something happen that hasn't happened there in the polls. If he fails to pick off a New Hampshire, a Minnesota, or Nevada, then Biden's starting point tonight is where Hillary Clinton finished in 2016, 232 electoral votes. And then the question shifts, and it becomes, where is Joe Biden on offense? And the answer to that we already know. You are looking at the battleground here. You are looking at states that Donald Trump won in 2016, that he's trying to defend, and that the polls coming into today, to varying degrees, show him in trouble in. Can Donald Trump hang on to at least 270 electoral votes worth of these states? The most immediate problems on this map for Donald Trump, we've been saying this for a while: Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, three states that he won by the skin of his teeth in 2016. Less than 1 point, his margin in each one of these states. If Donald Trump does not add any states from the Hillary Clinton column in 2016, if he doesn't pick off any tonight, and he loses these three states, he loses the election. And he's in particularly tough shape, according to the polls, in Wisconsin and Michigan. If he were to lose just those two, he would be on the cusp of defeat. Trump would. That sets up the drama that we're going to see in the first few hours tonight, because this is the interesting thing about the pandemic election. As important as Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania are to this election, it's going to take a while to get the results there because of the mail-in ballot situation. In Pennsylvania, if it's very close, it could even potentially take a couple days. What we think we are going to get a good look at, though, starting at 7 o'clock Eastern tonight, just about all of Florida, except the Panhandle. We're going to start seeing a lot of votes out of Florida. We're going to get a really good look in the first couple hours in Florida about who is winning, who is losing there. Got North Carolina in the early hours we should get a lot from. Ohio, Georgia potentially, even Texas a little bit later, 9, 10, 11 o'clock. We might get a good look at Texas. Every single one of these states, a big electoral college battleground, was won by Donald Trump in 2016 and really becomes, given what we just outlined here, the challenge he faces in the Great Lakes states, a must-win state for the president. If he does not pull off a Hail Mary pass and win Wisconsin, win Michigan, or flip any of those Hillary Clinton states, then he's got to go 5 for 5 in these states. He doesn't need one. He doesn't need some. He needs every single one of them. And then we get out west. You'd probably include Arizona in that category as well. So look at it this way. The president early on tonight in a bunch of big states is facing what may very well amount to elimination contests. He's got to win one after the other after the other. If he does pull them all off, if he runs the table in the Southeast, gets in Ohio, gets in Arizona, then the drama will shift to those Great Lakes states. Those two states there, Wisconsin and Michigan, where the polls have really put Trump in dire shape, and then to Pennsylvania, the one that even his campaign talks about as a must-win state. If Trump can sweep everything before that, that would then put Pennsylvania potentially in position to settle the election. But if Trump trips up, if he loses Florida, if he loses Georgia, Carolina, Ohio, Texas, any of these states, that effectively could be it for him.
Steve Kornacki, let me ask you, following on something that we discussed this weekend when we had sort of our first election night show. And you said, when I asked you about it on Sunday night, that if the president and his campaign had a sort of sleeper target, the one that they thought they could really potentially pull off from the Democrats, it might be Nevada. What's the equivalent for Joe Biden, leaving aside Wisconsin and Pennsylvania and Michigan, leaving aside those three states that we've paid so much attention to, those other states on your map, where is Biden most confident, or where do the polls show him most likely to pick off an important Trump state?
Here's the interesting thing. If you look at, if you want to compare, we talk about Nevada. The most recent poll we got out of Nevada put Joe Biden ahead by 6 points right there. And so when I said I think Trump, of those three, Nevada, Minnesota, New Hampshire, that Nevada was probably his best shot at getting a Clinton state, it's because 6 is the closest that he is in those three states. That's a different position than Joe Biden finds himself in basically every state we just talked about. If you look at Arizona, if you look at Texas, Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Ohio, Wisconsin, the only possible exception here where you see polls of Joe Biden trailing by that kind of a margin in any of these states would be Iowa, where there was one poll over the weekend, the Des Moines Register poll, that put Joe Biden down by 7 points in what previously had thought to be a bit of a toss-up state. So Biden's position in these battleground states is markedly different, at least in the polls coming into today, than Trump's is in the blue states that he's trying to pick off. That's why you don't see them in the battleground right now, and that's why I say the burden's on Trump tonight. We saw this 4 years ago. We saw states suddenly become competitive on election night that the polling running up to the election wasn't showing. The burden's on Trump to show us in New Hampshire, when you get a poll closed there relatively early tonight, to show us in Minnesota, to show us in Nevada that something's been happening there that the polling's not been picking up on, because those states look very different right now in the polling than all those other Trump-won battleground states.
Steve Kornacki, thank you, my friend. It goes without saying we will be checking in with you insistently and repeatedly and unexpectedly frequently throughout the night. Thanks.
Oh, we sure will. We want to go down to Miami Lakes, Florida, where Alicia Menendez is outside a polling location there. Alicia, that's one of the big prizes of the night. What have you seen there during the long day's journey into night?
Well, Brian, this is a state that every 4 years is incredibly close, and this year promises to be no exception. Here is what we know for sure. 9 million Floridians, as of yesterday, had already cast their ballots, whether those were early votes or votes by mail. Democrats came in today with about 100,000 vote advantage. The advantage for Republicans was that they had about 150 more high propensity voters. The question, did those voters come out? Did they stay with Republicans? The other target that everyone has been talking about, these NPA voters, no party affiliation. Did they turn out, and did they break for Joe Biden as polling was indicating that they likely would? Democrats also a little concerned about Miami-Dade County, which has historically been a Democratic county, a question of whether or not Republicans have increased their margins there in part due to President Trump's overture to Hispanics in the community. I spoke with one Democratic strategist in the state. If you were looking for early indicators tonight, they said as the votes are tabulated, as you look at early vote, as you look at mail-in voting, if Joe Biden is ahead by 420,000 votes, Democrats are going to feel like they are in a good place. If that number is below 370, Democrats are going to be very worried. And anything in between those two numbers, well, everyone's holding their breath. Brian? All
right, it's going to be a night of a lot of math. Alicia Menendez adding to it from Miami Lakes, Florida. Let's go over to Chris Jansing, who is in Joe Biden's hometown of Scranton, PA tonight. Hey, Chris.
Hey there, Brian. Robust turnout here all across the state of Pennsylvania. Not Obama numbers, but big numbers. Here in Lackawanna County, this is a small county. They've had lines as long as an hour. I'm told that's not something they normally see. And we've also seen places like in Bucks County in suburban Philadelphia. I think we have some pictures we can show you where the lines were stretched on for 3 to 4 hours, although that was unusual. And there are very few reports of any problems. Some glitches with machines, the usual stuff, but nothing that would lead you to believe what we're seeing, which is there are legions of lawyers spread out all across this state. Let me tell you about what's just happening here in Lackawanna, and to put it in perspective, only about 103,000 people voted here, but scores of lawyers have been in and out of the county election offices. Of course, today they weren't very busy, but what they were going to be watching tonight is the vote count. Of course, many of those early mail-in ballots are being processed. We've watched them being processed in Philly. I was just told, I was on the phone with the elections officials here. They say that they are going to be able to finish that processing and maybe actually get a number, figure out who's the winner in Lackawanna County here by midnight tonight. But there's something else that people are noticing, and that is the seeds of doubt that the president has sown without proof about the validity of mail-in balloting seems to be taking hold, because they're seeing a lot here and elsewhere across the state of what's called ballot spoiling. That's people who got a mail-in ballot but have decided that they're too worried that their vote's not going to be counted, that there will be questions about it, that it will be litigated. And so they're bringing them here and voting. I've actually talked to people who have done that. So finally, I would say, as a big Trump supporter is going by, Joe Biden was here. 4 stops this morning in his hometown, and he wrote on the wall, from this house to the White House, with the grace of God. Pennsylvania will have a big say, Brian, in whether that happens.
Chris Jansing, Scranton, Pennsylvania, on a cold election night. Chris, thanks. Rachel, over to you.
Here with me in the studio, nobody I would rather be spending election night with, my colleagues Joy Reid and Nicole Wallace. I know that both of you, in addition to doing all your regular work, have been in touch with people all day. Nicole, I want to go to you first, because while Steve Kornacki was talking about states that Trump wants to pick off from the Clinton column and states that Biden wants to pick off from the Trump column, you started kind of bouncing in your seat a little.
I have a note that says Trump state, and their state is North Carolina. And the Tillis campaign for Senate has Tillis down 1 today, going into tonight's election. And, you know, we've talked a lot about whether ticket splitters exist. The Trump campaign would push back and say Trump's about 1 ahead, but that would have you believe that there are ticket splitters, people, people that vote for different people on the Senate ticket than on the presidential ticket. So I think North Carolina is one that both campaigns are watching. I would say this, having listened to Kornacki and having talked to people all day from both campaigns, campaigns, and Republicans and Democrats working on the Senate races and around the country. It's amazing how similarly both sides view the race. Both sides view Florida, Iowa, and Texas as very strong for the president. However, Donald Trump's own campaign internals do not have him ahead in any of those three states. He is way behind in Wisconsin. He is pretty far behind in Michigan. And he is behind enough in Pennsylvania that their only path to victory there would be to declare some sort of red mirage kind of victory and then litigate it out. And I'm not sure that that message has reached the president. I'm told that he, in phone calls, is feeling confident.
But what you just described is the view of his campaign?
That is the view of his campaign advisors and people that have done this before. There are not a lot of those kinds of people that have done this before. But the people that know how to read the tracks will acknowledge, I think, under duress, that in those three states that Steve Kornacki keeps bringing our attention back to, Trump is behind in all three of them. They're also wary about Arizona. Again, they think McSally is polling lower than they are, but that usually isn't the case, that a Senate candidate is so far behind a presidential candidate. People usually go in and support the ticket. And they, along with the Biden campaign, are keeping their eye on North Carolina.
Joy, what have you been hearing?
So I have been hyper-focused on Florida. I wasn't going to do this, and this was not my plan this year. I was going to try to let Florida go. I'm trying to relax, release.
Florida will never let you go.
Right, it won't let me go. Well, it's Steve Kornacki's fault, because when I asked him, like, what state, is going to have your interest, he said Florida. I was like, darn it, okay. So I spent the entire day on the phone and texting with Florida people, both people who are watching the polls, who have people out watching the polls on the Democratic side, and also spoke with a Republican strategist who basically said that the goal tonight for the Trump campaign is to bust up the narrative by winning Florida, to sort of break up the confidence of the Biden side by shocking them all by just outright winning Florida. Because Florida, they count early, so it's possible that could happen. Here's what the numbers look like, at least as of 5 p.m. Democrats have had about 3.93 million people vote. It's about 10.3 million, and this is Alicia Menendez was even, she at 9 million when she was out there. It's now about 10.4 million total votes. Dems have about 3.9. Republicans have about 4.0. So it's razor thin there. There have been about 2.4 million NPA voters. So it's going to come down to them.
No party affiliation.
No party affiliation. Okay. So in Florida has one of the largest unaffiliated populations of voters in the entire country. Lots of young voters, lots of disgruntled Republicans, just lots and lots, and it's a mix. So the way that the campaign and people on the Democratic campaign side feel is that Biden is up between 2.4 and 3% with NPA voters, meaning he has a slight advantage with NPA voters. That's what their models are telling them. The other little X factor, though, is that there is a certain percentage of Republicans who, in their models, they believe are voting for Biden. And this is what the Lincoln Project was doing. The Lincoln Project had a goal of flipping a certain percentage of Republican voters. Florida was a big target for that because Florida has a lot of seniors and a lot of people in places like the Villages, which is a senior retirement, like legendary retirement, where it's normally very, very Republican, but COVID has changed the way that seniors vote in Florida. It's shifted them slightly back toward Biden. And you have to remember that Obama-Biden won Florida. They won it by a razor-thin margin, even losing places like Duval County. At this point, it looks like Biden is tying in places where even Obama, barely lost.
Wow. And more simply, they had to make some choices. The Biden campaign chose to send President Obama to Florida. That was a choice made. That was an informed choice.
Yes, 100%.
They're obviously seeing something here in the end that may have brought Florida a little closer than we're seeing in public polls.
To be clear, Florida's always a toss-up. If it wasn't a toss-up, we would have died and we'd be in another universe. We would, Florida's just a toss-up, but it's slightly a Biden-ish toss-up.
Well, I would say, in terms of how I spent my day today, I have been marinating in the numbers, particularly on this issue of ticket splitting. And I think the issue of whether or not voters split their votes by party between Senate and president is going to end up to be way more interesting tonight than we think. Because one of the things we haven't focused on that much in the national media, because the top of the ticket race is so fascinating and so fraught, is how close how many of these Senate seats are. You would be shocked to know how many of them have a polling average within 2.5 points right now.
Yeah.
And that's true in very red states and in very blue states and in swing states.
Yeah.
So I am looking for Senate races to go in unexpected ways tonight and for us to learn things about the divided loyalties of partisan voters.
Are you guys hearing this? Because the other thing I've heard, and I would be interested to hear, but both of you, if you're hearing the same things, that there is some real annoyance at Cindy McCain because there is concern about Arizona and just that issue, because the idea is that there's a possibility that people might vote for McSally who are I mean, that all the McSally votes are Trump, right? But that the other vote, that the Kelly vote could be one of those like ticket splitty votes.
Wow.
And that so they're worried now about that there's a worry about Arizona.
Well, I didn't hear annoyance at Cindy. I just heard that there's annoyance with Donald Trump for making John McCain, even after he died, an obsessive target, because that really hurt Trump in that state.
Brian, back over to you.
Ready. There's a lot we're going to have to keep our eyes on. The clock in the corner of the screen is critical. That counts us up to the start of the next hour, where we have 6 states closing. We're going to have partial vote from Indiana when we come back from this break. And we're going to talk with the dean of the South Carolina congressional delegation, man many called a kingmaker after making clear Joe Biden's pass through the South. Congressman James Clyburn is with us right after this.
We're looking towards these poll closings at the top of this hour. Georgia, Indiana, Kentucky, South Carolina, Vermont, and Virginia. Speaking of South Carolina, joining us now, I'm very pleased to say, is Congressman James Clyburn, who is the 3rd-ranking Democrat in the U.S. House, the dean of the South Carolina delegation. Sir, it's an honor to have you with us tonight. Thank you for your time.
Well, thanks you very much for having me.
So Donald Trump won in South Carolina by I think it was about 15 points in 2016. South Carolina is not seen as one of the most competitive presidential races this year, but that Senate race between Jamie Harrison, who you know so well, and incumbent Republican Senator Lindsey Graham, looks like it'll be one of the most expensive Senate races in world history. You've been very confident about Jamie Harrison in the home stretch here. How do you feel tonight?
I still feel very positive about Jamie. Thank you guys very much for having me. You know, Jamie has won just a great race on everybody. He is already a winner. What remains to be seen is whether or not he gets elected to the Senate. He has demonstrated how to run a campaign. Jamie came back home after working on my staff in Washington to run the South Carolina Democratic Party. And a lot of people didn't know this, but 2 years ago, the South Carolina Democrats picked up seats in the South Carolina legislature. That had not happened for a long time. It's because of the work that Jamie was doing. And so he knew exactly what was taking place in the state, and he laid a real solid foundation for his campaign, and he went out to raise the money. And he did a real good job of it. And why I'm so impressed is because this was done with a lot of young people who had been laying out of the system. And he told me when he first decided to go this route that he needed to bring young people into the party, all ethnic backgrounds, religious persuasions, and he did it. And they got to work with each other a long time before they got into this campaign. So when you ask why have they been so effective with this campaign, it's because they knew each other. They've been working together now, many of them, for 4 or 5 years. And so you didn't have the kind of stuff that goes on in campaigns with everybody jockeying for the attention of the principal or trying to get their own agendas out there. These people knew each other, they respected each other, and they have been working together famously. So Jimmy is a winner, and he's shown us the way to go going forward.
Congressman James Clyburn of South Carolina, sir, we know this next half an hour is going to be fraught as we wait for the poll closings and those first results. Thank you so much for making time to us on this on this momentous night.
Thank you for having me.
All right, we have just actually got some of our first votes in for today, so let's go right over to Steve Kornacki. Steve.
Rachel, let's take a look here. These are votes, not many, but this is Indiana. We're getting a scattering of counties here, just 4 counties here in Indiana. You see overwhelmingly Trump. This is just a very, very small amount of the vote. Indiana, a state that the president carried by nearly 20 points 4 years ago. Obviously, Vice President Mike Pence's home state. I can tell you, as the Indiana comes in a little bit this hour, and not all of the polls in Indiana are closed, but as it comes in, one place we're looking at is right here in the Indianapolis area, because this is the area area of Indiana that has been moving dramatically. This is Marion County, where Indianapolis is, and if you go one north there, where Hamilton County is, this is an area here that sort of typifies what Democrats are hoping is going to happen nationally over the course of the night. It's densely populated, fast-growing metropolitan area where already Donald Trump lost ground in 2016 from what Republicans have typically done. There's a congressional district here with an open seat race tonight. We want to see when these votes come in early tonight if we're seeing an early trend in Indiana along the lines of what Democrats say is going to happen in metro areas just like the Indianapolis metro area around the country tonight. So we don't have anything to report there. But before we get going on all these other states, maybe we'll see something in here. Maybe we'll be able to take a look at that. But again, just a scattering of counties in deeply red Indiana right now, as well in Kentucky, another state that Trump won overwhelmingly in 2016. We are starting to get a scattering of counties. Nothing surprising here in these initial reports out from, again, these are heavily Trump counties, too, basically, that are reporting here. But there you see the early votes. And as well, we mentioned exit polling. We do have some initial looks at the electorate and what might be informing the choices here, and we will get those to you shortly.
Steve, thanks. Very interested in the suburbs of Indianapolis as well as northern Kentucky when that comes in. Tremaine Lee standing by in one of the big prize states of tonight, Greensboro, North Carolina. Hey, Tremaine.
Hey, Brian, I'm in front of the old courthouse in Greensboro, which is in Guilford County, where later this evening, election officials will be counting the ballots. Now, the reporting of the actual tally will begin 45 minutes later than expected because of a few issues that a couple polling locations had in opening. Still, election officials tell us that they expect tonight to have 97% of the vote counted. Now, that's in stark contrast to some other states that are talking about starting tomorrow or later than that. But so far, they feel good about it. But again, they're experiencing, like so many other states, record levels of turnout. And in all of 2016, they had 4.7 million ballots cast. In early voting alone in North Carolina, they had 4.6 million. So they still feel confident, even given the sheer rush of ballots they expect to be counting.
Tremaine Lee, thank you for that. Greensboro, North Carolina. A break for us, I'm told. More coverage when we come right back.
Whoever wins, Donald Trump, Mr. Biden, whoever wins, we really need you to know that we're coming to that table this time. We're not just going to give you our vote. We're coming to the table. We have issues, real issues that need to be addressed.
A concerned voter in Florida. It has been said that the state of Florida is anywhere between 5 and 7 of the most critical political states in our country. At least 3 of those states are along the I-4 corridor through the middle. And at the one end of that is St. Pete. That's where correspondent Kerry Sanders is for us. Kerry, I imagine it's been a busy day down there.
It's been a very busy day here. St. Petersburg is in Pinellas County. And as they say, as goes Pinellas County, so goes the state. And so what we're looking at here potentially is a reflection, as we've seen in the last 40 years in Florida, that if Pinellas County chooses somebody, that turns out to be the president-elect. So we have the most immediate numbers because technology is a wonderful thing. Let's go right now and take a look at these are the most immediate numbers in Pinellas County as of 6:30 tonight. And we're looking at the Democrats at 206,000 votes, Republicans at 212,000 votes, 132,000 no-party affiliations. I'm going to do a little quick math here for you. With about 79% of registered voters in Pinellas County actually voting, that breakdown is about 44% Republicans, 45% Democrats, 36% no-party affiliation. And that is the key vote that both campaigns want, that no-party affiliation. And within that group, they narrow it down and they look at the senior vote. Brian, if they can get those 65-plus voters who have no party affiliation to break one way or the other, expected not only will it make the decision here in Pinellas County, but as I noted, Pinellas County then often reflects what the state will do. And this is a very, very evenly split state, as you know, where we have about the same like amount of Republicans and Democrats. And so it always comes down to those NPAs, no party affiliation, Brian.
Usual caveats apply about early return numbers. Kerry Sanders in St. Petersburg, Pinellas County, Florida. Steve Kornacki at the board has something late. Hey, Steve.
Well, Brian, you were just asking about the suburbs of Cincinnati. We're looking here at Kentucky. And remember, this northern part of Kentucky, this tier of counties here, this is right outside Cincinnati. And you see we are getting some vote reported there, substantial enough that actually in this very early count, Biden is ahead in Kentucky. I'm flagging this for two reasons. Number one, obviously, we're interested in these suburban areas around the country to see if there are some trends there. But number two, because I want to take folks through something that's going to be a very important dynamic as results come in, whether it's in Kentucky or any number of other states tonight. This is a very good example because this county, Kenton County right here, look, the votes you have in right now, holy cow, there's Joe Biden up 2-1 in the votes you have right now. And by the way, this is in a county that Donald Trump got 60% of the vote in 2016. Keep in mind, the vote we're looking at here right now in Kenton County, these 23,000 votes and change, this is the early vote. This is the mail-in vote. And in Kentucky and in many other states, we are expecting, and all the polls the last few weeks have been saying, that the early mail vote's going to favor Democrats. And the question's going to be that same-day vote when that gets added in. And I can show you this right here. This is the early vote. We're now waiting for this. This is the same-day vote in Kenton County. And so the question and the drama, whether it's Kenton County, Kentucky, or whether it's counties all over the country, the drama's going to be that same-day vote. Does it bring Trump back to his 2016 level when that's all reported, or have Democrats actually made gains here? But this is going to happen in some ways where the numbers move around potentially very dramatically. Keep that in mind tonight. What looks like a big early Democratic lead may not stay one when the same day comes in.
Steve Kornacki, thanks. Over to Nicole Wallace.
And joining us now is someone who, like me, has been white-knuckled and wringing their hands on the insides of campaigns on election night. David Plouffe and I were on opposite sides in 2008 when I was on the losing McCain campaign. Former Obama campaign manager David Plouffe, good to have you here, my friend. Let me ask you about what both campaigns are looking at in the final days. We talked about them Sunday night. They're the tracking polls. They're the usually, often, the most accurate kinds of polls because they're very targeted. What does it say to you that both, it's my reporting that both campaigns inside tracks say about the same thing, that Joe Biden is ahead in those three states we talk about so much, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania?
Well, you know, a campaign's number one job is to understand where the voters are, because that's how you make decisions, right? So if they're being honest about the numbers, I'm not surprised that there's a confluence there. And Nicole, we've also had an unprecedented amount of state polling by media outlets, which is great after 2016 to really provide us more detail about what's going on there. So I think we have some sense of the vote share that we're likely to see. But the question is turnout. And as Steve Kornacki was just saying, I think in every battleground state, Texas may be about even, but in every other battleground state, I think it's incontrovertible that Joe Biden's going to enter today with a pretty significant lead. The question is, can Trump catch up? And even when we're seeing right now, you know, in Florida, Democratic, Republican, NPA, you know, if Biden gets 88 or Biden gets 12% of the Republican vote, and Trump gets 7% of the Democratic vote, and Biden narrowly wins NPAs, even if there's a 200,000 vote Republican advantage in terms of turnout, Biden's going to win. So we really have to wait and see the returns in these counties. But yeah, I think that's right. I think those three upper Midwestern states, they've been resilient. I mean, Biden has led in those pre-pandemic. You know, they've just been stable for almost a year.
Oh, go ahead. I was really quick. I was going to ask you what you thought Trump had to make up in terms of same-day vote because of his mainlining a message to the whole country, and I'm not sure to whom it was intended, that the absentee vote and the mail-in ballots were rigged and fraudulent. He was going to get them all thrown out. It seems that if turnout ends up disappointing in the eyes of Republican Senate candidates and even the Trump campaign, he may have shot himself in the proverbial foot there.
Well, Nicole, let's use one of our favorite terms when we're talking about Trump and his campaign, malpractice.
I know where you're going here. Yeah.
So, well, there's just, by the way, there's no Republican Senate candidate or House candidate or anybody running for any office maligning mail-in votes because they need the votes. Trump's out there. So basically what he's done is overloaded. There's some percentage of Republicans, I'm sure, who would have voted early by mail, but because Trump was attacking mail and decided to do it today. So he's got everything riding on needing extraordinary turnout today. I think he's going to get strong turnout, but I think to overcome some of these Biden leads, he's going to need, if not historic turnout, something more in that direction than just strong turnout.
David Plouffe, always good to talk to you. We'll be calling on you early and often as the night goes on.
And honestly, even if you were not paying attention to anything that has been said tonight on television, the fact that he has a Wawa cup behind him on the bookshelf tells you everything you need to know about how much Democrats are focused on Pennsylvania tonight. Very subtle, Mr. Plouffe, very subtle.
So not subtle.
We are coming up. We're like 18 minutes away from poll closings in a whole bunch of states, Virginia, Georgia, South Carolina, Florida, except the Panhandle. Georgia has had so much focus this year. We've got former Georgia gubernatorial candidate Stacey Abrams, a Democratic force in her own right. She's going to be joining us right around the corner. Stay with us.
We choose hope over fear. Yeah. We choose truth over lies. Yeah. We choose science over fiction. Yeah.
6:47 Eastern Time. Welcome back. Voter suppression is not on the ballot anywhere in our country, but it is thoroughly a part of the storyline tonight, along with legal issues. Those will be the purview of our chief legal correspondent and MSNBC host, Ari Melber, who is standing by to talk with us. Hey, Ari.
Hey, thank you very much, Brian. Lots of exciting stuff. We're tracking breaking Election Day stories here, starting with a new ruling, a federal judge ordering the Postal Service to do a sweep to ensure mail ballots are delivered on time in places like this: Pennsylvania, Florida, Georgia, Michigan, Arizona. This could be crucial because the Postal Service already missed a 4:30 p.m. deadline. The sweep for ballots is now going on at over 200 facilities. We've seen places like Central PA where only 62% of mail ballots went out on time. Also, a new case of alleged meddling. There have been these suspicious robocalls, some telling voters to stay home. Other people initially thought this was some sort of pandemic warning. Others falsely telling people maybe they could vote tomorrow. Well, moments ago, I just caught up on Zoom with Michigan's Secretary of State about this. Do you have a sense of how many voters were reached or impacted by those robocalls?
They were consistent enough to be concerning. We're not talking about one or two reports here. We're talking about a significant handful. We're not going to have near full results tonight.
Interesting, coming from, of course, the top elections official in Michigan. We also know some of the timing tonight will be driven by state law. For example, take a look. There are states that enable earlier processing of ballots. They could have more thorough results earlier, like Florida and Minnesota. While other key states, like we just heard from in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, can only start processing later under the law, officials say, as we just heard there, they may not get fully final results tonight. So 2 final points here on turnout. If a candidate is winning in a state by a blowout, some of these details matter less. Winners declared. But on the rules, some states must start later and take longer. Let's be clear tonight. Not only is there nothing suspicious about that, it's the law. Rachel?
Ari, thank you for that. That story about the judge ordering the Postal Service to go sweep for ballots, the Postal Service essentially not doing it. Now the judge being like, well, you're going to have to come back to me and explain why you didn't do it. I mean, well, that's happening on Election Day while polls are still open. It's just incredibly, incredibly dramatic. Let's bring into the conversation now Stacey Abrams. She is the founder of Fair Fight Action and the co-founder of the Southern Economic Advancement Project. Stacey Abrams, it's a real pleasure to have you here tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So Ari was just talking there about states that go fast and states that go slow in terms of when we're going to get vote totals tonight, and the whole country is feeling very impatient. What should we expect about Georgia in terms of results tonight and timing?
So Georgia is one of the states that allowed pre-canvassing, so they allowed processing to start earlier, October 19th, but tabulation doesn't begin until polls close. We should have some results starting to get numbers around 8 p.m., but it's going to take time. We have more than 56% of our voters, we had almost 56% turnout in early voting, so a little under 4 million voters. That's a lot of early voting and absentee balloting that has to be counted. But what I would say for Georgia voters and for voters across the country is that we want slow and accurate, not fast and wrong. And we know that Georgia is one of the states that's going to come in probably earlier than some states. But because Georgia allows you to cure absentee ballots, fix mistakes that may have been made with signatures and other issues, then we need to remember that there might be ballots that aren't immediately clear as to how they were voting.
Stacey, while we're talking to you, we're seeing some images here about long lines to vote. These images happen to be from Atlanta earlier today. We have seen in recent election cycles, including the one where you were running for governor, just absolutely atrocious voting system dysfunction and people being forced to wait in unacceptably heroic lines in order to get their votes cast. How have things been along that score today and during the early voting period in Georgia?
Things have been much better today. We only have a handful of precincts in a few counties that are being requested to stay open later because of slow starts today. We were able to, through Fair Fight and other organizations, to get out good information when we knew there were problems. But I will say that a lot of the changes that we see in 2020 came about because of the litigation that we filed in 2018, because of the work we've been doing through Fair Fight and others to expand access to polling locations, to make certain that counties were given the poll books they needed, to ensure that we had early voting locations expanded and we had drop boxes. That's a lot of the work that Fair Fight's been focused on for the last 2 years, and we are seeing some of the results tonight.
Let me just ask you, Stacey, I know that what you're talking about is voting rights and voter enfranchisement and making sure that people can participate in the democratic process the way the Constitution envisions. I also just want to ask you about what you are expecting tonight in terms of outcomes. You guys have in Georgia those two incredibly crucial and interesting and complex Senate races, in addition to a hard-fought presidential campaign. After all you've seen and all your experience, what do you think is going to happen at the end of the night in Georgia?
Look, I don't do predictions. If I did, I'd spend my time in Las Vegas, not in politics. But I will say this. We had extraordinary turnout during early voting. We had a strong set of numbers heading into tonight. And look, I'd rather be Democrats than Republicans in Georgia tonight.
I hear you. Stacey Abrams, the founder of Fair Fight Action, co-founder of the Southern Economic Advancement Project. Ms. Abrams, it is always great to have you here. Thank you so much for making time.
Thank you.
All right. We are, of course, approaching the top of the hour, about 7 minutes away from 7 p.m. on the East Coast. Polls are about to close in some key states, including Georgia and Virginia and South Carolina. We've got a look at the newest results coming in just ahead. Stay with us. We are sneaking up on 7 p.m. here on the East Coast. We're about to get our first full state poll closings in Georgia, South Carolina, Virginia, Kentucky, Indiana, Vermont. We just have a couple minutes here. What are you guys watching for?
I'm still obsessing at Florida. I'm just getting texts from both phones, and everyone feels exactly the same way. Toss-up. I can't get anyone to even take a guess what's going to happen. Full, pure toss-up.
So you're talking to Stacey Abrams. First of all, nationally, she gets so much credit for what
100%.
she's done in that state. And as you guys were talking, I kind of looked at you and I said, I heard something about Georgia from one campaign. Which one was it? Oh, it was the Biden campaign. They're feeling good about where things stand in Georgia yesterday and today. So they're keeping an eye on Georgia, too.
So between Georgia and Florida, it sounds like what we are hearing anecdotally is that both campaigns think that Florida is a toss-up.
Yes.
That the Biden campaign may be more optimistic about Georgia than they are letting on.
I reported Sunday night, that the Biden campaign was feeling more optimistic about North Carolina and Georgia than Florida. Now, I think Florida may have tightened a little bit. As I said, they sent Obama there yesterday. But I think there is a lot of fluidity in where things landed these final 48 hours.
There's some weird stuff. I was just hearing also that there are a lot of new voters, lots of new American citizen voters. The Caribbean American community is breaking more Democratic and actually registered more as Democrats and NPAs than as Republicans. And the turnout among Democratic Caribbean American voters seems to be higher than the turnout among Republican Caribbean American. So there's like this, but that's a tiny pocket, right?
Hey, it's so hard to model in the first place.
Very hard.
It's so complex. And then this year with early voting changing and the overall voter turnout numbers being so magnificent, it's going to be really hard to extrapolate from any previous experience.
Can I just say, and you talked to Stacey, even if Democrats don't carry Georgia and North Carolina and Texas, the investments that they have made are long-term harbingers of doom for Republicans because they are activating voters who will remain as Democrats, and they're younger, they're of color, and they ain't going back. And Republicans would have to completely alter their entire carbon makeup to make them ever come to them.
Well, and to that end, the fact that we're not talking about Virginia with a lot of suspense tonight is the product of Democrats having made that kind of investment in Virginia over the past decade. And now we are where we are with Virginia.
Rachel, like you're looking for suspense tonight. That's exactly what we have to deliver people as we come up to the top of our first hour of returns. That would be 7 o'clock Eastern time, the first list. And here we go. Here's what we have for you at 7 p.m. These are all NBC News projections. Georgia, too early to call. Indiana, as expected, we are projecting Donald Trump as the projected winner there. Virginia, too early to call, though Biden is leading. In Kentucky, too early to call at this hour. South Carolina, too early to call at this hour. Vermont, up in New England, too early to call. Here is the long and arduous road to 270 electoral votes. Again, one state awarded. As expected, it went to the incumbent president. To the Senate races we're watching, and the battlegrounds especially. Georgia Senate, too early to call. That's the special election. In the Ossoff-Perdue race, Georgia Senate number 2, we'll call it, too early to call between Ossoff and Perdue. South Carolina, Lindsey Graham's bid to stay alive, too early to call. Virginia, Warner leading the race, but officially we have it as too early. Kentucky, Mitch McConnell's bid for re-election, too early. Senate at this hour, and we're going to return to this all night long, of course, with the hurdle the Democrats have to regain control of the chamber. Steve Kornacki, what have we learned thus far?
Well, Brian, I'm literally just eyeing this screen because I want to tell you what's about to happen, what we're expecting about to happen in Florida. Now, the polls are not closed in Florida. The Panhandle is in the Central Time Zone. They're going to stay open for the next hour, but the rest of Florida is closing right now. And what Florida does is here we go. Let's take a look. We got our first one. Lee County, you just got about 80% of the vote in Lee County, Florida. Donald Trump with 57%, Biden with 42%. What are we looking at? We are looking at the early vote and the vote by mail. That gets reported in all of these counties very quickly after polls close. You can expect a bunch of these to start coming in. And in fact, I want to move north because this was a county in 2016 that told us early what was happening nationally. Pasco County, Florida. This is the early and mail-in vote. Donald Trump is leading it with 56%. Joe Biden's at 43%. This county just north of Tampa, Trump won it by 22 points in 2016. This represented a massive surge to Donald Trump. It was one of the early signs along the Gulf Coast in 2016 that Trump was having a much better night than expected. Now, this is critical. You see, with the early mail-in vote, Trump is not doing as well as he did in 2016 overall. Remember, we expect the early mail-in vote in Florida and many other states to be much better for Joe Biden than the same-day vote. You are not seeing the same-day vote being reported out here. You're seeing the early and the mail-in vote. So there will be more early and mail-in vote than there is same-day vote. But we expect that the vote that is yet to come in Pasco will favor Trump. The question, and that vote we expect will also be reported out in relatively short order. The question is, with that same-day vote in Pasco County and all these other counties, is Trump getting back to his 2016 level? Is he exceeding it? Is he falling short? As these counties come into focus, that's the story we're going to be telling. We have got the early and mail-in vote in Pasco. We'll see the same day come in now. We'll see if Trump can get up there. We have some other counties coming in, and I want to call them up here. Let's call it, okay, 54% to 45%. Again, this is a county where now on the same day vote, we got probably 3/4 or so of all the votes that are going to be cast here on the same day vote now. We expect Trump to do better. Can he get that up to 58%? Can he get his total up to 58% as the same day vote comes in? Here's Lake County. This was a big one for Donald Trump in 2016. He got 60% of the vote. You notice the trend here in all these early reports we're getting. And this is a lot of vote coming in these places. Trump is several points shy of his 2016 number. So the question is, how well does he do when we start getting the same-day votes? Again, here is what I expect in Florida. For the next half an hour or so, 45 minutes, everything in the eastern time zone in Florida is going to start lighting up like this, one county after another. We're going to get the early vote. We're going to get the mail vote. We're going to get what amounts to the clear majority of all the votes cast in these counties. And then after that's reported out in all of these counties, they are going to start adding in the votes that were cast by people who went to the polls today. And that is the story we're going to track in every single one of these counties as they come in. That's the story in Florida. I do want to just check Georgia to see if we're getting any votes yet in Georgia. It looks like we aren't. The one thing I want to flag, and you were talking about this with Stacey Abrams, so much of the Democratic strength in Georgia is concentrated in the Atlanta metro area. There's a collection of 9 counties here that Hillary Clinton won by 30 points in 2016, that Stacey Abrams won by nearly 40 points in 2018 when she nearly won statewide. This is what makes or breaks the Democrats statewide, and we don't think we'll get that. We think we will get the votes here, especially in Atlanta, later in the night. So I think expect as Georgia starts to report, we may get more from the Republican areas and be waiting on the Atlanta metro area. But again, I think the story right now for the next half an hour, and let's go see if we've got some more, is down in Florida. 4 counties so far where we have the early vote. You're seeing it, what that adds up to in the statewide total. We'll continue to monitor that. But these will be the best numbers in these counties that Joe Biden gets. And then the question will be, can Trump overcome it in the same day vote? Here we go. St. Petersburg, Pinellas County. Interesting. Trump won this county in 2016. This was a big win for Donald Trump when he won Pinellas County. Look at that. 500,000 votes were cast here in 2016. This is going to be as good as it gets for Joe Biden. The question, though, is as the same day vote comes in, when this total gets up near 100% and we got all the votes, is Biden still above that 47% that Hillary Clinton finished with here in 2016? Anything above that represents an improvement for Biden, represents slippage for Trump, represents good news for the Democrats. So this is Biden's starting point as we get the same-day vote in from Florida. I'm just taking a look back here. Obviously, we are going to be paying very close attention to these 3 counties down here, Miami-Dade, Broward, Palm Beach County, big counties here in the southeast part of Florida, big Democratic counties. We're expecting, again, to get vote just like this there shortly. We want to see in Miami-Dade. This is where the Trump campaign has talked about making inroads with Cuban-American votes, really denting what had been a big Democratic margin in 2016. We want to see if there are any signs of that when that starts to come in. Broward, that's just a core Democratic county where Fort Lauderdale is. We're going to take a look for that. We got another one coming in here, Citrus County. Again, keep in mind, 2016, it was this part of the state in particular, the Gulf Coast, Tampa North, St. Pete North. This is where you really saw Trump surge in 2016 relative to how Republicans normally do. You're getting the early vote, Citrus County. It's a county Trump got 68% in 2016. He's already at 67 here. Same day vote to come. Obviously, that would be, you'd look at that county in the Trump campaign, you'd say, you like to see that number. Those are Republican areas, though. We are getting basically Republican areas reporting right now. We want to see these Democratic areas. We want to see Miami-Dade, Broward, Palm Beach, what Biden's looking like there as this vote starts to come in. Again, Gulf Coast, especially this region right here, this is where you really saw that surge. By the way, you saw this surge for Trump in 2016. One of the reasons for the surge, retirees who live here. Where are they retiring from? Often the Midwest, Wisconsin, Michigan. This was a harbinger in 2016 for what was to come later in the night when we got to those Midwest states. So that's why I'm paying such particularly close attention there. But again, I'm just looking here to see if anything else has come in. Continue to monitor this. Again, I expect in the next half hour, 45 minutes, this thing is going to be lighting up, Rachel.
Well, Steve, I'm going to ask you to do something I think that's a little bit unfair for me to ask, but it's second-order math. As we have been talking about, we have been studying, we have been preparing our audience for, and as you just described, the advance voters, the absentee ballots, the mail-in ballots, the ballots that we're getting first were expected to skew Democratic. The day of votes, the people voting today, that's expected to skew Republican and toward Trump. Given that expectation, can you tell already from these votes that are coming in that are, again, absentee and mail-in ballots, if they are matching expectations in terms of how well Biden expected to do with those voters?
Well, again, I'm interested in this one here because this is where St. Petersburg is. And, you know, we have a little tool here I want to check. Again, this indicates we're looking here at the vote that we have yet to come here. We're looking at about 150,000 yet to come. This one is interesting because if Joe Biden, this is a pretty substantial, about 6.5-point improvement over Hillary Clinton here. And again, if Biden lands at 50 in Pinellas County, that's good news for him. So there is, I think, a little bit of a pad here potentially for Biden as this starts to come in. Again, Pasco County, if you're the Trump campaign, where you're trying to get this up to here, is 59%. He's not far off that. If you take a look up at Citrus County, you're looking at needing to get up 1 point there. So, you know, for the Trump campaign in like a Citrus County, that's not a bad place to be. For the Biden campaign, they might like to see what they're looking at in Pinellas County, and we're just going to continue to look here as this vote comes in.
This is going to be fascinating to watch these votes race in over the next half an hour, even as we're getting more poll closings, both in the middle of this hour and at the top of the next. Brian.
Steve, just yell, wave your arms, usual drill if you got stuff that we need to come to you for. Michael Steele, former chairman of the Republican Party, former lieutenant governor of the state of Maryland, these days affiliated with the Lincoln Project, standing by. And, Michael, I know you've been watching and listening, and you wanted to get on the board based on what you're seeing thus far in Florida for the sake of our viewers.
The important thing that I think to note that Steve pointed out is the level of underperformance by Donald Trump relative to 2016. This is the problem when you go out and your strategy is to just work the same day vote. In other words, if Donald Trump had placed an emphasis, his campaign had placed an emphasis on some of that early vote instead of telling voters that vote by mail was a bad thing, a lot more seniors would have probably participated. A lot more independent voters probably would have participated. So you're now beginning to see the failure of that strategy as he's got a drop off of 4 or 5% in some of these early vote counties. So the question now becomes, how do you make that up same day? And typically across a statewide race, you're looking at maybe, I think Donald Brazil can tell you from 2000, you know, they were lucky if they got a 3% makeup in terms of closing the gap between where their opponent was and where their campaign was. The reality of it is it's going to be hard to make up these larger gaps of 45 to 55 from the last time or 55 to 59 this time. It's just a problem because you didn't do the full stretch of the campaign, and you're now seeing it play out in the numbers.
Michael, we appreciate you being an engaged viewer from home. Keep us honest with what you're seeing throughout the night. Steve Kornacki, who clearly needs more electronics on his belt. Steve, I notice a couple more counties have lit up.
Yeah, we are looking at Hillsborough County here. Again, this is Tampa. This is right next door to Pinellas. And again, you're looking at Biden here jumping out. This is a 12-point edge. Again, let's take a look. This is a Democratic county from 2016. This is obviously Democratic overperformance for the time being relative to 2016. This is an 11.5-point advantage for Biden. Clinton won this one by 7. So again, the question here, as this, we say about 80% of the vote here, about 135,000 votes remaining to come in from this county, 600,000 basically reported out so far. Does that 55 continue to stay above the 52 that Clinton finished at? Any county where Biden is finishing over what Clinton finished at is progress for Democrats. Any county where Trump finishes under what he got in 2016, that would be falling back a little bit for him. So we're just tracking this county after county, and I see, as I say this, we just got some, this looks like just like one precinct from Orange County. This is where Orlando is, but it looks like that's just one precinct. You can see that's about 312 votes right there. So I'm just, Broward. Oh. Here you go. Look at this. We've got...
Wow.
Well, now, this looks like 163,000 votes reported out here with about 860,000 to go. I believe what we are looking at here, and I want to check this, and if my producer can say this in my ear, is this same-day vote in Broward? Unclear is the answer I'm getting. I say that because this is very small, what you're seeing here. We're also getting a different color out here. Let me get some clarification on this. Broward, it's a biggie. As you can see, we're expecting about 1 million votes out of Broward. This is big for Democrats. Fort Lauderdale. Let me see if we can get an answer on that and come back to it. Let's take a look at Palm Beach County. We continue to only have a scattering. We have a couple precincts in these places. I'm just looking to see where we have not yet checked. Let's see, did we look at Lee County earlier? Again, I think we did. The question here is, can Trump get up to 59%? All right, I'll continue to monitor these and let you know if we got a little bit more, Rachel.
Steve, let me follow on with that. And Joy, let me ask you as well. It's been so focused on Florida. Is there any reason to expect something special about Broward in terms of why they would report their proportions so different compared to other counties?
Well, Broward, unfortunately, my former county where I used to live, they tend to report a bit slowly versus the rest of the state. And Broward is one of those true blue counties that is a bellwether for Democrats. They call it the sixth borough because there's so many New Yorkers who live there.
Okay.
You rarely hear a Southern accent in Broward. You hear a lot of New York accents. Broward underperformed a lot in 2016. It came in toward the bottom in terms of turnout. And that was a big problem for Hillary Clinton. It was also a problem in 2018 for Andrew Gillum. That when Broward underperforms, Democrats underperform. When it overperforms, and what I was hearing today is that Broward is potentially going to hit 80% turnout. That's their projection. Miami-Dade was hoping for the same thing. And
That's
that Broward
mammoth, isn't it?
It's really high.
Yeah.
And Broward tends to sometimes, I mean, they can do, when Obama ran, the 08 and 12, Broward was one of the best performing counties. But it tends to be better performing for Barack Obama personally than it has been for other Democrats. Miami-Dade was also hoping for a big turnout. It was actually quite light. And that was one of the big concerns for the campaign today, that Miami-Dade was super light. But Broward was strong mail-in and early. So I'm not surprised it's...
And the reason that I'm singling it out is because you're looking, so like here Miami-Dade, that's 84% in, right? A lot of these other counties that we're getting large numbers of votes in, they're in that proportion. But that's not what we're seeing from Broward. Let's go back to Steve.
Yeah, they tend to be bits.
We just got 1 million votes in Miami-Dade County. This is a biggie. And take a look at what we're seeing here. Let me try to clarify this screen for everybody. We got about 1 million votes in. That's the bulk of the vote we're going to get from Miami-Dade County. Joe Biden is leading here. His lead is only 9 points. This is significant because we've been asking, has President Trump made inroads with Hispanic voters, particularly Cuban-American voters in South Florida, in Miami-Dade County? This 54-45, remember, this is a county that Hillary Clinton won by 30 points in 2016. Now, again, we think this is primarily, I believe, early vote you're looking at here, because, again, the vast majority of the vote we know is going to be cast early. There may be a scattering of some same-day precincts that are part of this as well. But, again, I think this is, we were looking, was the Miami-Dade number for Biden going to be lower substantially than the Hillary Clinton number? There is still room here, and I want to get clear on what's to come in Miami-Dade. There's still room for this to grow a bit, but my preliminary look at this is there have been inroads that Donald Trump has made with Cuban-American voters, very likely, in Miami-Dade County. Again, this is an enormous county. They've just reported out 1 million votes, and Donald Trump right now, it looks like he is running above his 2016 number. You could just take a look at the statewide total right now that is starting to take shape. I'm just going to go north to Broward and see if we got any more. I asked about Palm Beach. We're still waiting on that. Did we get any more out of Orange County? All right, I'll keep looking at these and stop talking to myself, but that's the big update.
The big update in Miami-Dade, that's huge,
well, and
right?
I mean,
that's...
We were talking in the break that what I've been hearing anecdotally is that there are issues with the mail-in vote in Miami-Dade because it's unusually low. It's not just low, meaning disappointing for Democrats. It's low. So, and even the numbers that Steve was just showing there, Miami-Dade is a massive county. The bulk of the Democratic strategy is Miami-Dade, Broward, Palm Beach, particularly West Palm Beach, and Hillsborough County, where it's Tampa, St. Pete. That is normally where they win elections. The rest of it looks all red when you go back and look at Florida. But if you're getting such low, that's what people found unusual today.
Let's go to Brian.
Forgive me, as I will ask every time we hear that sound, which means we have a call, and here it is. His first inroad into New England, as expected. Joe Biden has been awarded by our projection the state of Vermont. We'll go to the national map. There we are, the road to 270. One each at this hour, coming up on 7:19 Eastern. Back to the east end of our studio and the ongoing conversation already in progress. Rachel?
Indiana and Vermont. So if you had those on your bingo card in terms of drama,
surprise,
those are now settled. Nicole, let me ask you to weigh in terms of what we've seen from Florida so far. Those Miami-Dade numbers for the Democrats look daunting in terms of what they're hoping to do statewide.
Yeah, look, I said Sunday night, Biden campaign felt better about North Carolina and Georgia than they did about Florida. Yeah. I think there was a sense that that's how that county might come in. Now, Florida is sort of a graveyard, right, for both parties, but it has been trending more Republican. And I think Florida, the story of Florida is reddening as quickly as Texas is turning more purple. So I think the demographics in Florida, it might be one of those states that we're not talking about 4 years from now. But I think that for many, many days, Florida has felt really good for Trump.
Yeah. Florida and Nevada are sort of the flip side states. I always said, like, the sort of angry grandparents all moved to Florida that hate taxes, and all the fun grannies moved to Vegas. So it's like the one is bluing and one is reddening in the same.
All right, it is. So I was going to say 7:19 on the East Coast right now, which means we are in the middle of a whole bunch of exciting things happening in terms of poll closings and new data. Let's go back to Steve.
So, Rachel, we got some numbers actually from Georgia. Here's my first wrong prediction. I said it was going to take a long time in the Atlanta metro area. We at least have what looks to be early vote from Cobb County. This is a huge suburb, a suburban county right outside Atlanta. You go back a decade, 2 decades, just a few years even. This was a core Republican county. What you're looking at here is Joe Biden. And again, I can show you this. You see the coloration here. This represents early vote. This represents mail vote. Joe Biden, though, we say this is going to be his best number. So he's going to come down from this, presumably, as we get more vote in. But this is one, it was a big deal 4 years ago when when Hillary Clinton eked out a win in Cobb County. That was kind of a sea change just for a Democrat to have more votes than a Republican in Cobb County. Again, this number will come down. Here's the question. Does it come down back to Clinton land in 2016, or do we find out that Democrats have made big gains potentially in metro Atlanta, in a suburban area they are relying on statewide?
Georgia is a state, Steve, remind us, where we are expecting early votes to reflect potentially an artificially inflated Biden number, an artificially inflated Trump number. In terms of the order by which they count, which candidate might expect to look good in the early numbers?
Yeah, I believe we might have a mix here, and that's what I'm looking here to see if I can show you. So I think in most of these, we are going to get the absentee vote first. They could get these ballots processed ahead of time. They could get them all in position to just get them reported out at polls closed in a lot of places. So I'm just looking around right now. Some of these states we get a mix, but it does look like in all of these counties that I'm looking at so far, we are basically looking at early absentee vote. So I think so far in Georgia, certainly if you look at the statewide number in Georgia right now, which only represents a small scattering of counties here, these are the best numbers in these counties that Biden's likely to have tonight.
All right, 7:21 right now on the East Coast. Again, what we have had polls closed thus far, Virginia, Georgia, South Carolina, Florida, except the Panhandle, just within the last 22 minutes. We are heading toward poll closings in North Carolina very shortly and in Ohio. And then, of course, the top of the hour, a whole bunch more, including Pennsylvania. We're going to take a quick break. We will be right back. We are right into the thick of it already. Stay with us. Closing 7:30 Eastern time, expected in North Carolina and in Ohio and in West Virginia. As we await those poll closing just moments away, we are watching the Florida map light up like a slot machine as Steve Kornacki pings from county to county, watching that vote come in fast. Steve, what are we learning?
Yeah, Rachel, I mean, first of all, we keep going county to county. Let's zoom out here and take a look at the big picture here. Probably about half the vote in Florida. You see this, nearly 6 million votes already counted. Again, what's happening here is we have nothing from the Panhandle. That'll close shortly. Heavily Republican. We're getting mostly early vote from these counties. I want to update you on a few, though. We mentioned Pinellas, St. Petersburg, where in the early vote, what primarily looks like it represented the early vote, Joe Biden was sitting at about 53.5. You can see as more same day is tabulated, it's come down a bit for Biden. Again, if you look at 2016, Clinton was at 47, Biden sitting at 51. He's still above that Clinton number. How far is this going to fall? We're watching that story in St. Petersburg, in Pinellas County. We've also now got, again, what primarily looks to be the early vote from Duval County. This is where Jacksonville is. And again, this is one that Donald Trump won narrowly, where Biden right now is over that Clinton number, where Trump right now is under his number. Let's see what happens as more vote comes in there. Another biggie, Volusia County, same deal here. You're looking at a 55-42 Trump County. Can Trump get the number back up to 2016 levels? I mean, this is the big picture that's just emerging here. As you can see, Trump in so many places needs to pick up 3, 4, 5 points or something, 2, 3, 4, 5 points to get up to his 2016 level. One other biggie. I forgot to show you this one. Sumter. This is the county with the oldest median age in the United States. We talk about where's the senior citizen vote going to go. This is where the Villages is, that massive sprawling retirement community. So they've got just about all their vote in right now. There's a scattering to come, probably less than 7,000 votes. Trump is sitting at 67% right here. Remember, this was a big one for Trump in 2016. He got 69%. It was 69-30, a 39-point margin right now. It is a hair under that with a few votes left. Let's see if that adjusts a little bit. But that's a biggie I know a lot of folks were keeping an eye on. So, again, the big picture, though, that's coming into focus here as we get this early vote is a very close race in Florida. Look at that. Joe Biden right now in the statewide margin, about 10,000. Again, wow. For the Democrats, there's a lot of vote still to come, a lot of that early vote still to come, and vote in general in Broward County, and I believe as well, in Orange County. These are two huge Democratic areas that are going to pad Biden's total because basically when you got all the early vote counted from this part of the state, Biden needs to be ahead. Biden needs this statewide number to be ahead because A, the same day vote here is going to favor Trump, and B, the panhandle is going to favor Trump as well. So it's not all filled in yet, and even some of these counties that are filled in, I think we just got Palm Beach. We'll continue to monitor.
Wow. So, Palm Beach, can you show us what was 20, go back.
Yep.
What was 2016 in Palm Beach County?
You got it. This was Hillary Clinton got 57, Joe Biden sitting at 60. And again, I just will double check this. Again, I think this is basically the early vote, the mail-in vote. And again, I think we're getting perhaps a scattering of same day.
Thank you, Steve.
And that sound means we are approaching another set of states. The 7:30 poll closings, North Carolina, Ohio, and West Virginia. And the time has arrived, 7:30 exactly here in the East. And here's what we have from our NBC News projections. The president...
You can't claim that as a dependent, because it's inanimate.
People ask me what sort of a person should become a celebrity accountant, and I tell
West Virginia, too early to call, though, as expected, Donald Trump in the lead there. Here is the bar graph of where we stand early yet, very early yet, in the road to 270, one each awarded. You see how the electoral votes have been awarded as well. Big one we're watching tonight is Georgia. It's a battleground. We have it as too early to call. You see the breakout there in early vote. The map of the road to 270 looks like this at this hour, right about now. It's going to be a complex one by the time this is over with tonight. 11-3. Senate races we're following. North Carolina, too early to call. The Tillis-Cunningham race. West Virginia, too early, though the incumbent Capito is leading. Here is the Senate makeup at this hour. We can't show this often enough because of the percentages needed, the seats needed if the Democrats want to end this night back in the majority, back in the U.S. Senate. When we last left our friend Steve Kornacki, he was looking at some new vote in from Florida. Hey, Steve.
Hey, Brian, yeah, we continue. Again, there you could just see the time zone as you get to the top of the hour. You can see the time zone cutoff. So not a huge population area, but the panhandle of Florida. We're about to start. Everything that just happened here for the last hour is about to happen here. Again, what we're looking at here, though, this is a good moment to kind of freeze and take in the whole picture, again, before you start getting the panhandle, because it's not complete, but we're getting close to a complete look at roughly what that early vote, mail vote looks like in the eastern time zone portion of Florida. All the stories you've seen for the last month about record-shattering turnout, is it favoring Democrats, is it favoring Republicans? You're primarily seeing those ballots opened and counted and processed right now and reported out. And again, when all of these are complete with the early, if you're Joe Biden, you need to be ahead. And I believe if we froze things and just tallied up all the early and mail-in vote, he would be, because there's a ton of vote to come in early from Broward, where he's going to get a huge number. There's a ton from Orange. Obviously, I think we have like one precinct reporting. This is where Orlando is. Also the same in Tallahassee. So you've got some big, gigantic Democratic areas that have not spit out these. And there it is. Biden just took the lead. He just got a big batch of votes in Broward County. There it is. So that's what just happened. We now have, I would say, very likely just about all very close to all of the early vote reported out in Broward County. Biden now getting 66%, the same day to come. What that did statewide, you see, that's a huge effect there. Put him ahead statewide. He could get some smaller bounces still when we get what just happened there. That will happen in Orange County probably any minute. That will happen in Leon County probably any minute. But again, Biden wants to get ahead in the early vote here to withstand what's coming on the same day and to withstand what's coming in the panhandle. These are not entirely analogous situations, but I think it's worth reminding folks, we think that in 2016, Hillary Clinton very roughly won the early vote portion of the balloting in Florida by 6, and Donald Trump won the same day very roughly here by 12 points, and that translated into a Trump victory of 1 point statewide. Now, the sort of balance of ballots here is going to be different this time around, but it's just a reminder that you can have those splits between the same day and the early, and they can make a big difference. So, again, waiting on a couple big Democratic areas. There are some core, smaller Republican counties still to come in with their early vote. But when all the early and same day is in there, Biden wants to have a pad because he's going to need it.
Steve, I want to bring into the conversation somebody who has seen Florida politics up close and intensely because he's been in the middle of it. Former Congressman Carlos Curbelo is with us tonight, and we're lucky to have him. Sir, let me just ask for your take on this. You're watching these Florida numbers come in. We're all doing complex math in our heads in terms of how we extrapolate from previous races in the middle of a pandemic with different voting patterns, with different projections in terms of overall turnout. What do you see when you look at these numbers tonight out of Florida?
Rachel, what we're observing here tonight in Florida is what Steve Kornacki, Chuck Todd, and others have been following. Have the Trump campaign gaining ground in Latino areas. You look at that number in Miami-Dade County, that has to worry the Biden campaign some. Hillary Clinton won Miami-Dade by about 30 points in 2016, about a 10-point lead now. That is evidence that Trump has gained ground with Latinos. However, a troubling sign for the Trump campaign is that in more white suburban areas, the Biden campaign has gained ground compared to what Hillary Clinton did in 2016. So really an inversion of trends, Rachel, because for years it was Democrats gaining ground with Florida Hispanics and Republicans doing better with whites. This year, it seems that has been reversed, and no matter who wins this state, that's going to be a big story tomorrow.
Yeah, we're looking at about 2/3 of the vote in Florida. It's very close right now statewide. Biden ahead by a little. But we do still, Carlos, expect those panhandle counties when they come in at the top of the hour, when they have their poll closing, we do expect those to still be heavily Republican counties, don't we?
That's right. Votes outstanding from the panhandle here in the state of Florida. So as Steve says, it's really important for the Biden campaign that those early votes, especially absentee votes in big counties here in South Florida, continue coming in for him, because he will have to withstand that inflow of red votes from the panhandle and from those traditional voters who went out and voted today here in this state.
Former Congressman Carlos Curbelo, thank you for joining us as we continue to watch these Florida numbers come in. It's from a human perspective, you talk about all the stuff in advance, you kind of game it out, you talk about what the expectations are, what you've heard from your sources, what the two campaigns are saying, what the tracking polls look like, and you feel like you've got like a sense of it, and then it starts to come in, and it's like you get so overwhelmed with the ongoing onrush of data. But that's where we're at right now, with the rest of Florida coming in. Those panhandle counties will be closing at the top of this hour, but meanwhile, we've got too early to call races in states all over the eastern seaboard that have already shut. We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we'll have more from those Florida numbers, and we'll check in on Virginia, Georgia, some of the other too early to call races that we're tracking closely here at MSNBC.
Welcome back. 7:41 Eastern Time as we look at the view from our backyard. I am told that in the last couple of minutes, because a commercial break rolled, depending on where you live in the country, not the fault of any human, though humans may be harmed as a result, that you missed 2 calls that we made at 7:30. Not so much calls as estimates. They still remain the same. That is that Ohio is too early to call, as is the presidential race in the state of North Carolina, which was and remains too early to call. That's our status. Over to Rachel in the East End.
Steve, I hate to go back to you in the middle of all of this, but we're just going to keep going back to you. I have a bunch of stuff that I want to ask you about in terms of the other states that have recently closed, but can we talk right now about what's still coming in Florida?
Yeah, again, nothing yet from the Panhandle. What we're waiting on here, Leon County, Tallahassee, we still don't have any of the early vote. We did just get a bunch from Orange County, which is where Orlando is. That's what you see here. I'll take this off. We've got too many numbers on the screen. Biden getting 64% in the early vote, the absentee vote in Orange County. Again, compare this to 2016. Hillary Clinton won here with 60%. Biden right now over that number. Let's see if that can hold up as the remaining vote comes in. We've got, I believe here, too, we could just take a quick look along these Gulf Coast counties and update them. Yes, here we go. I'm nodding my head. We said Pasco County we wanted to monitor as more and more vote came in. There's very little left in Pasco County right now. Again, core Trump County, he got 59 in 2016. He's sitting at 58.7 right now. Biden, remember, no third-party candidates, so it's, don't make too much of this, but Biden a little bit there ahead of the Hillary Clinton number. But work our way north along the Gulf Coast here. Still vote to come in. Same-day vote that we expect to favor Trump here, 63%. He's trying to build that up 2 points. You could see he's coming close to these numbers. Citrus County, there is not much left. He's over it by a point. But you see what's look at this, 70.6 to 71% is what he got in 2016. Just a few votes left here. So you just see this pattern here. Look at this, 57.4, 59%, a little bit more vote to come in. I mean, Trump in these Gulf Coast counties looks like he's on pace to come right in the neighborhood of that 2016 number. So if he's just hitting those numbers, that's good news for his campaign. The question is, can the Democrats offset that with gains anywhere? We've already talked about Miami-Dade. That's a real bad sign there for Democrats. Here's the one we've been monitoring, Pinellas County, St. Petersburg. And we said that Biden number, which started out with the early vote at about 53 and change, now down under 50. Now it's 49.7. The Clinton number here in 2016 was 47%. Let's see how many votes remain here. There are still about 60,000 votes to come in. Clearly, the trend here, the trajectory of the same-day vote is favoring Trump, so look for that 49.7 to come down further. This may not be the kind of gain Democrats were hoping it might be. Let's look next door in Hillsborough County, where Tampa is. Again, Biden, the Clinton number was 52. Biden sitting at 53.5. There's 75,000 or so votes left to be counted here. Clearly, again, the same-day trend in Hillsborough County is favoring Trump. It's that election day vote. So look for this vote to come down a little bit. It might end up a little bit north of 52 if you work out the decimal points. But again, we are just looking here at stuff that looks very, very similar to 2016, with the biggest change that we're seeing on this map right now in Florida is in Miami-Dade County. And I'm just looking to see if we've got anything more. There's still 200,000 votes to come, likely a lot of same day, already underperformance from Joe Biden. That's a worrying sign for Democrats. They've got to make up for it somewhere. We'll keep looking at these and see if something appears on this map. But to take a look at the statewide vote here, getting close here to, and let me just see if we got any, we're still waiting on Leon. This is basically, we are close to being able to say we got all the early vote and some of the same day in from the Eastern time zone part of the state. This is the last big jump Biden's going to get in the early vote here. So when Leon comes in, this number, you see right there, he's 83,000 votes ahead of Trump statewide. That number will jump when we get Leon. Now it's down to 73,000. But we're now in the phase here, I think, where in a lot of these counties, the same-day vote is starting to come in. And even in counties where Trump isn't doing that, he's doing much better in the same-day vote. And, of course, also has the panhandle to come.
Steve Kornacki, thank you. Looks like we can start to see the arc of how that is going to go in Florida, but we will not know until we actually see it. Brian, back over to you.
And I want to bring in Claire McCaskill, former Democratic senator from the great state of Missouri, and find out what's on your mind as you watch thus far tonight.
Well, I think that I see the Trump campaign walking down a field with mines. And any of these states could blow up, and then they're in real trouble. Now, they may get past the first one, which is Florida. It looks like it's going to be very close. It certainly doesn't look like it's going to be a decisive victory for either side. But then they've got the next landmine, which is Georgia, and then North Carolina. And then, of course, the mother of landmines up in Pennsylvania. So, and Trump has to win these states. Biden doesn't have to win all these states. So I still see that Biden's path is pretty clear, and he's got a lot of them. And I am, of course, waiting to see more votes on all these Senate races, where I am paying very close attention to what's going on in Iowa, Maine, North Carolina, particularly to see if we're going to call Chuck Schumer Majority Floor Leader when the sun comes up tomorrow.
Claire, that's a little liberal on your part, assuming we're going to know that when the sun comes up tomorrow, isn't it?
Well, if you look at the states where the Senate races are really in play, most of them can count votes today and previously. In other words, we think we'll get results in Georgia. We think we'll get results in North Carolina. We should get results in Iowa. Obviously, Colorado and Arizona we're not as worried about. We feel very comfortable about both those states. So we may know more about the Senate when we go to bed at 2 or 3 in the morning than we do know about the presidency.
Okay, I'll take the optimism. Claire, keep watching with us. We'll go back to you when things warrant. Hey, Steve Kornacki has early vote from Ohio.
Yeah, I think that we are taking a look here at the early, the absentee vote in, well, let's go statewide here and give you that view. Statewide in Ohio, that would explain why Joe Biden right now, you see statewide leading so much. 2 places here that are accounting for this vote. Cuyahoga County, core Democratic county. This is where Cleveland is. And again, we're gonna play that game where let's see, does he end up significantly over the Hillary Clinton number? Right now, he's at 75%. Clinton got 66% here. Biden's going to need substantial improvement across Ohio. This is, remember, an 8-point victory for Trump statewide in 2016. Let's take a look in Franklin County, the state capital, Columbus. This is, now look at this, 76%. 61% is where Clinton landed in 2016. So again, a little bit more than half the vote in here. We think the next half is probably going to be a little bit more favorable to Donald Trump. How far down does that Biden number come? He wants that to land. Biden wants that to land not at the Clinton number. In a state like Ohio, he wants to land that substantially ahead. Here is an interesting one to look at. Outside of Columbus, this is a traditionally Republican sort of bedroom community suburban area here. This is the early vote here in Delaware County. This is a big one. Biden leading it 54-45 in the early vote. Again, Trump won this by 17 points in 2016. That was bad for a Republican. This is one of those areas, traditionally deeply Republican, suburban, exurban area where Democrats think they can make gains, think they have made gains in the Trump era. So this will be an interesting one to watch as the same day comes in. Biden right now significantly over that Clinton number. We again expect Trump to make up ground here as the rest of the vote comes in. But does this number land substantially above 2016 right there? I'm just seeing Zanesville. We might, okay, no, we're only getting a couple votes right there. I just want to, is this Mahoning? We got, okay, here we go. Now, this is interesting. This is the early vote in Mahoning County. This is Youngstown. This had one of the biggest, most dramatic swings we saw anywhere on the map in 2016 to Donald Trump. Yes, I know he lost the county to Hillary Clinton. He lost it by 3. 4 years earlier, Barack Obama had won this same county by nearly 30 points. This typified when we talked about that blue-collar Midwest surge to Donald Trump in 2016. This is the capital of it, Mahoning County, getting within 3 points there for Donald Trump. Joe Biden sitting at 62% in the early vote here. So let's see. Does that come down? Does that finish above Clinton? Is Biden able to reassert himself in some way, reassert that traditional Democratic advantage? He's certainly not going to get to where Barack Obama was in 2012, but could he finish substantially north of Clinton did in Mahoning County? That would be a big signal because Mahoning County is the kind of county where Trump was really just making leaps and bounds in 2016, past what we've seen from Republicans before. So, again, that's the statewide picture, a scattering heavily slanted to those Democratic areas. areas in terms of the vote that's been reported so far. So don't read anything into that statewide number. And I'm just going to check back in Florida here one more time. Look at that. You see that advantage Biden had all but depleted right now. I don't think we still don't have Leon County in, still don't have the Panhandle. But again, and I'm just going to look to see if we've got any more a little more Miami-Dade. And you can see as we inch our way up to 100% of the vote in Miami-Dade, the Biden share, which was 54.5% the last time we checked, is down to 53.9%. That's the political gravity in the eastern time zone of Florida right now. It favors Trump at this moment just because it's the same day vote primarily we're talking about. Broward 66, Palm Beach, Biden sitting at 58%. And again, statewide in Florida, a little south of 7,000 votes is the edge at the moment for Joe Biden.
If you think we are juggling a lot of data and a lot of information right now, wait till 8 minutes from now when 17 states have poll closings. We're going to take a quick break and get organized before that happens. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Battleground state.
We are closing in on 8 p.m. Eastern, whereupon we will have poll closings in Alabama, Connecticut, Delaware, D.C., Florida, the Western Panhandle counties, Illinois, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, Mississippi, Missouri, New Hampshire, New Jersey, Oklahoma, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, Tennessee. Busy night. Right now, we are still watching vote come in Florida. Steve Kornacki, can I also ask you for an update on Georgia? Georgia has been closed for a little while. We expect a bit of a slow count in Georgia, but what do we have there?
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to be like Florida where we're suddenly getting, oh, here we go.